the cornerman. But he is not a cornerman at all. In fact, he is the center of Sri Lankan boxing. Today, Sportsnet is here with a person who's a sports administrator, a state administrator, the president of Sri Lankan boxing, an executive member of World Boxing, and honorary consul of Georgia. Please welcome Mr. Diane Gomez. So, you're a wealthy man, in fact, very wealthy. This is what people usually see you as. So, and also, besides the fact that you're wealthy, they also see you as a person who harbors this mad love for boxing. In most of the games, you're the one who insert and take off the gum seal of the boxer. So, what do you expect from doing that?
For a boxer to win, he has to fight internationally about 5 fights. 5 fights from 5 different countries. And it's a very difficult task. Me being a boxer in my school days and the former Sri Lanka junior flyweight champion, I understand what it takes to win and the mental resilience the boxer needs at the corner. So when I take the gum shield out and washes the spade, stops the blood and wipes the boy, I have 30 seconds out of that minute to tell him why he is fighting or why he needs to win the fight. I have to be in the boxer's mind. I have to be very matured. I need to understand the boxer. I need to understand boxing to play that role. I play the boxer's father's role, not the president of Sri Lanka boxing, not the coach, not anything else. The role is, if I'm taking a boy to the fight or a girl to the fight, I play the father's role. Just imagine when you're fighting or you're attacking somebody, right? If your father, who's a strong man, behind you, you feel much more confident. So that in a simple way, I would say the corner man in the situation for 20 years as Sri Lanka's corner man, I have played more the father's role of the athlete. Just to tell him why he needs to win, inspire him. And the 30 seconds that I tell is so important because you're so tired and that you're fighting somebody, your morale is sometimes down, sometimes very high. So you need to kind of pump it up. So I am the person who is doing for the boy. And why, you'd ask me again, why am I doing it? Because I feel without that critical support for the man, we could never kind of achieve our Olympic gold medal. Now, I have no vested interest. I have no vested in anything else. But the sole purpose is to win a medal for Sri Lanka, which is considered Olympic dream, an impossible dream. But I think Sri Lankans are geared for that. So the small contribution that I could do, I think will go a long way.
And that is why you're named as the Godfather of the boxing, of Sri Lankan boxing.
Maybe people call me that because I have been involved in the sport for 20 years and I have kind of run it more like a private company, making key performance indicators for the boxing, where only the athletes have been funded, no officials. Officials will have to always pay for their tickets and their accommodation unless it's Commonwealth Games or Olympic Games. So I have managed to get the funding, sponsorships, and sometimes I put in some money and from friends. So therefore, it is the organizational ability which has got me this name called the Godfather, because I kind of take care of boxing. So it also denotes when you say Godfather, it can denote a lot of meanings. They can portray me as a tough man and more like a autocratic guy. Sometimes I play all these roles as well. Because it is very difficult to do sports in this country, one without a Godfather, because this is the only time after 20 years the minister and the ministry has taken a very keen initiative to promote boxing and funding boxing. Other than that, it was always private funding. So without a godfather, boxing or any other sport will not have a dog's chance. You need to have people who will support it. The second thing is when you come in and people put a name like that, you need to live up to the expectations as well. You need to do the right thing most of the time. I don't think I'm perfect as well, but most of the time I have been doing the right thing in the best interest of boxing.
Okay, that's a very motivational role to play.
Yes.
So, talking about your appearance, we usually see you with a cap like the revolutionist Che Guevara.
Yes.
So, what is the reason behind the clothing you do? Because is it because of the love you have for the revolutionists, or it's just merely a fashion statement?
I would say both. But actually, when I was, Che Guevara was always a hero in my younger days. The time I was much younger, the three idols were Che, Mandela, then Muhammad Ali. So they were like my heroes. But of course, the cap has nothing to do with Che. The cap was worn initially because my hair was thinning, I was going bald. So to at least to cover my tatte, that I started wearing the cap. But of course, I liked it. I enjoyed the Kangol cap. It's not a beret actually. It's more like a fashion statement today. And people all over the world in boxing identify me with the cap. So I think I had taken it to an advantage. Even people forget me, my name or anything. But the whole world, there are 200 countries taking part in boxing, and all 200 countries, presidents of boxing, remember me as the man who wears the Kangol cap, because he's at the corner wearing the Kangol cap. He always wears it, so it has become a bit of a fashion statement as well.
Okay. Now you mentioned that Che Guevara was the idol of yours.
Yes.
And you liked the revolutionists while you were growing up. So, with the little knowledge I had gathered about you from newspapers or internet or whichever, I always perceived you as a revolutionist in the field of economy.
Yes.
In a country where most people say sportsmen don't have jobs, you go around handing them jobs and job opportunities.
Yes.
Like, for example, we can take the boxers and athletes like Damayanti Darsha and shooters like Roviniya Vemana. So, what do you expect from doing that, and why would you give this opportunity to these sports personalities?
The reason that I got involved is when I was 31, when I went in as the managing director to Slimline, MAS Slimline. That was a three-way joint venture between Victoria's Secrets, Sara Lee Courthouse and Mars Holdings. So, at that time, I lived 3 days away from my home, from my Colombo home. I used to go to Pannal on a Monday, come back on Wednesday, go back on Thursday, come back on Friday. So the 3 days I stayed, I really saw the real life of the village people. I realized, although I lost my father when I was 12 and educated at Royal College, I still had the facilities. My mother could give me the best facilities for my education. But when I went to Pannala, I really saw the hardships of the people and hardships of the athletes. And I realized in a country like ours, if the companies nor the government does not support the sport is dead. The athlete stops their athletic career because other than playing cricket, there is no future for any other athletes. So I started thinking from the grassroots level because understanding my socialist philosophy in my younger days, I understood the plan, how it works from inside, not from outside, inside. So I started recruiting all the graduates who had done sports. I created a structure where it became a sports fanatical company because everybody at the university level, everybody at the school level had done sports and the extracurricular activities. So they could be harnessed, their energy could be harnessed into setting up a ground or the fundamentals required to start a sporting revolution. and Pandala was the ground. So we had the grounds, then we created a gym for the athletes. Then the best opportunities of those talented athletes, I could get them into slimline. So that's how the boxers came. The time I left after 20 years, MAs had 137 athletes in 21 different sports representing the country. So we created the culture of sports. So that I realized people like Anuruddha Ratnayaka or Harsha Kumara could only pursue a career either in the forces or in the police force. Now, Anuruddha Ratnayaka went for a second lieutenant interview, but he failed because he was a bit too short. So then he ended up having with me at slimline. So most of the boxers and athletes ended up mostly by default. But what I also did, I realized after their sporting career that they has to do a corporate job, and otherwise they will get dropped off. So I got them to study. I got them to study English. I got them to study processes like lean manufacturing. I got them to go into university in the Open University. So today people like Anuruddha Ratnayaka, Anusha Kodituako, Damayanti Darsha, they have all got their diplomas and degrees, and they are holding fairly middle management jobs. So when you look at that, that is the whole philosophy behind making a difference at the grassroots level. And I stopped, going for cocktail parties. I started not reducing my social activities. But the time I spent at Pandala, I want to make a real difference in sports, in education. So anybody who was getting through to the university from Pandala, we kind of sponsored. I personally sponsored about 60 students. So the motivation was to make a difference because you saw the reality. And I understood if people like me didn't give a helping hand, the athlete nor the student will have a much more difficult endeavor to pursue the dream.
Sri Lanka sees your wealth, your status as a sports administrator in boxing. But the world's view of you is slightly different mainly because that they don't see you just as a wealthy man or a sports administrator. And they respect you for it. So what do you think are the causes for this consequence to happen? For the world to have a different perspective of you rather than Sri Lankan society?
The reason is I'm a professionally qualified management accountant, CIMA. I'm a fellow of CIMA, ACCA and CPA. So professionally, I have achieved the highest standards required by my profession, and I've been the president of CIMA in Sri Lanka in 2001, 2002, long years ago. And I was business leader of CIMA, Janashakti, and of course CIMA icon by 2013. That's in terms of my professional ability. But of course, I studied subsequently. I went on my executive education to Harvard Business School and the Wharton Business Schools, which are also world's kind of top universities. So in terms of my management ability and running a billion-dollar organization, I established myself in the corporate field. But when you get to the world boxing, few things count. One is the integrity to a great extent, that you are very neutral, that you cannot be swayed by different motivations. So people expected me, a professional coming from this kind of a background, and of course educated, and holding a very senior job in a multinational organization, could fit into any of the commissions. So I served in the financial commission, the marketing commission, and eventually the women's commission. And I was the only man out of 20 women from other parts of the world to be in the women's commission. Now the reason for that, for being selected, is because I took a great role in empowering women in this country, to changing the juki kella into a team member concept. So all these concepts are very well known, in our society. But I was invited to speak at Oxford University on women's empowerment at Green Templeton College. So the international community also knew my work on the women's empowerment. So they put me to the Women's Commission. So getting on an international level, plus then we went and set up factories in Kenya and Ethiopia, and did some work around the world other than Sri Lanka. So even I was recognized for the leadership award for the African continent. Now I used to tell them, look, I am not from the African continent, but they felt I deserved it, that I had done a lot of work internationally. So because of that recognition, only I have been appointed to the executive committee of the Asian Boxing, the first Sri Lankan to do so, to the world body AIBA, the first Sri Lankan to do so, and the first Sri Lankan to be in the advisory board of the Commonwealth Secretariat. So all these recognition came, one, because of integrity. Second thing is the ability. The third thing, your professional qualifications backing you up. Because if you are not a finance guy, you can't, be in the finance commission. You don't understand finance. If you don't, now I'm the deputy chair of the World Marketing Commission. Now that's a huge job. I think it's beyond my capacity. But they feel out of all the 200 countries represented in boxing, that I have the strategic view how to run the world body and how to market the world body, how to brand the world body. And you have to manage huge sponsorship programs. And then you need to have integrity to manage those programs. Because, sport is always corrupt. So you need to understand there are honest people and there are dishonest people and there are people with vested interest. So that is the reason that I've been globally kind of rewarded by various positions. Many positions have come and some I have not accepted. But at least I know that I have been recognized and appreciated by the world body.
In all honesty, I honestly believe that you deserve all the kind of positions you have taken so far, because you have done a lot for the world and for the boxing in Sri Lanka. And moving on, after you came into boxing administration of Sri Lanka, it has received international wins and gone to Olympics and won medals and created a new generation of brilliant sports personalities. But when most of the people hear the term Sri Lankan boxing, the first image that pops into their mind is of you, the Diane Gomez. So what do you think of this speculation?
When you think of Diane Gomez wears many caps. One time people used to remember me for the work I was doing to the communities in different parts of the world and different parts of Sri Lanka. So more in the apparel trade. I was like the face of mass holdings for one time because I was getting involved in a lot of things. So it was a different corporate cap. Then when I went to the professional bodies, they remembered me as a SEMA icon. Professions, face which is known to the younger people. So that was a different cap. When it came to boxing, boxing is because it's all over the island. People remember there's more people looking at the papers and the TV, and they always see me, with the boxers. So obviously, they remember me because, say for example, Sri Lanka has they forget people very fast. They forget athletes very fast. So obviously, no athlete can box for 20 years. But the guys who started initially, Harsha Kumaras, who won the medals for the country, Anuruddha Ratnayakas, then there are Anusha Kodituakkus, Nilbini Jaisingers, over a period of time they fade away and they are only memories. But Diane Gomez has been there for 20 years, because since it's a difficult job and there's no money to be made from boxing, nobody wants to do the job. So obviously, I have taken sometimes, I have not been the president also for a certain period of time in my career, in 2010 to 2014 or something like that. But still, I was involved in boxing because I supported them. So people remember me. So if you ask somebody in Jaffna or in Hambantota, they will remember Diane Gomez's personality as a boxing personality. The second thing is, how I really see it is when I come from the airport, coming back sometimes on a business trip or on a holiday. The question that the immigration officer asks me, he would always recognize me, and when he looks at my passport, and he'll never ask anything other than mostly boxing. He will ask, Mr. Gomez, can we get our next medal through? So I know the customs officer who is, at the airport or the immigration officer, his first reaction is, can we get the next medal through? Which kind of inspires me. When I go deep down south or, to the north, people ask me, Diane, can we get the next medal? So people in the country are at the ground level are the people who appreciate my personality and what I'm doing.
So you yourself mentioned just now when you came into boxing, the main problem was monetary funds.
Yes.
But you fixed it somehow. So, but it was not the only problem the sports has faced so far. And there's this notion in the society that when you do a certain sport, you lack in terms of your educational level.
Yes.
But it's a false assumption most of the time. So you are a school sportsman and is really well educated, and you have gone to higher places in the world, and you have secured a name for yourself in the world international society. So, and you had used this knowledge you had gained and exchanged that with international nations to uplift the movement of boxing in Sri Lanka. So, according to you, what is the relationship between sports and education, and how do you see it, and how can it improve a person's personality?
I think education is a must, because if you can be a brilliant athlete, but does not mean that you are a brilliant administrator or a brilliant coach. That is a false notion that people have. You need to do sports. You need to understand, say for example, to be the president of Sri Lanka boxing, you need to fight at a certain level, at the schools level, the junior national or a national level. You need to have some grounding. So you understand the sport. I can't be the expert on a sport which I'm not very conversant. It's much more difficult. But also at the same time, when you become an administrator, you need to structure the federation or the association to structure it. You need to have the knowledge of that. And that is where the education comes. Or if you are not qualified in that field, you must recruit the right people to do the job. There are two ways of managing it. Say for example, if I go into a sport which I've not done, I've done athletics for Royal, I've done boxing for Royal, but say for example, I'm going to football or swimming. Now, I don't know anything about those. I understand, the game, but I'm no expert on that. So then I would do is recruit a chief executive or a CEO if the organization is large. Now, in a sport like boxing, you don't have the facilities nor the funding to make a structure like that. So you have to do away with the best people who will fit into those roles. So when I take the treasurer, I will take people who are qualified in that. So that is how this education counts a lot in sports. The thinking, setting up the vision, setting up, what you call infrastructures. But if you don't have the education, how are you going to think those through? You take the money from something and just go on a tour and then you just try to get a medal. It won't work. You have to have, like any organization, a long-term plan, a mid-size plan and a budget. This year, what are we going to do? Next 6 months, what are the tournaments we need to take part? And it's not only the sporting technical stuff, the administrators. Is our referees and judges trained? Is our doctors getting the international boxing exposure? So that is why when you look at Sri Lanka boxing, we have at least 5 international judges, officiating at world games. Now today at the Tokyo Olympics, Nelka Shiromala is one of the referees and judges. At the Rio Olympics, it was Udeni Kiridena. So we have proved with certain qualified professional people at every level of the game, not at a strategic president level, but at every strategic positions of the organizations we tend to recruit people who are skilled in that area.
So, according to you, to be a good athlete, you need to have some sort of educational basis on you.
Not to be a good athlete, to be an administrator. For an athlete to succeed, the competencies are very different. I would say it's a determination, it is a mental resilience, then the technical ability, your biometrics, all those things count to be an international athlete. But if you are at the same time, if you are educated as well, then you stand above, you cut above the rest. Say good example is Kumar Sangakkara. He can bat, bowl and field. He's got the leadership qualities and he's very fluent in 2 languages. And today he's the only Sri Lankan to be appointed to the prestigious president of the MCC. Now, if he didn't have the academic background nor the capacity or the capability, even if he was the most brilliant cricketer, he won't be appointed to that. So the world recognizes that.
Fun fact, he's my idol.
Yes.
So, moving on to your personal life, we all know that you have done everything in your power for the better future of your 2 daughters.
Yes.
And you love your family very much. But when we catch a glimpse of you, we usually see you with sports personalities all around the country. So, what does your family think about that? Do they feel a little bit neglected?
I would give you two examples. Both my daughters represented Sri Lanka internationally in synchronized swimming. They are the first medalists, the Sri Lankan synchronized team at the Japan Open in 2006 or 2000, in that era. Then my younger daughter got to the final of both 2 Asian Games and a Commonwealth Games final as well. She used to train in Canada for a short while with the partner Kadapayarachi from Muses College. So they did extremely very well. My elder daughter represented only at the Asian Games. After when they went Visaka, then when they went to Manchester University, they all played water polo. They both captained Visaka in water polo and synchronized swimming as well. Then they went to Imperial to do postgrad and they gave up sports. I mean, that was it. But their complaint was father was never there, when they took part. Now, good examples, when my daughter did the final at the Commonwealth Games in India in 2010, I was with Manju Vanniyarachi because I realized my daughter might not make it. She made it to the final, but she might not get a medal. But I was banking on Manju Vanniyarachi's gold medal that time, so I was with Manju Vanniyarachi. Of course, it was a very sensitive thing for the family. I always felt country's medal came first before, your children's medals. And there was a time when Damayanti Darsha was trying her best to qualify for the games. This was before the 2004 Athens game. My daughter was representing maybe at the age of 13 for the first time in a major meet at the Sugardasa swimming stadium. And Darsha was running in the national stadium, the trial. I was with Darsha because I wanted her to qualify at any cost. So there are a number of occasions that I missed them. Even them getting the bronze medal in Japan, I flew back because I had to come to work and I couldn't wait for the medal ceremony. So there were instances when they were very young, they were a bit disappointed. I never went to see a single trial because I was a boxing official. I didn't want people to feel, that although they were team games, that there was any undue influence. So I never went for any trials. They did all them by themselves. But when they grew up, when they heard the stories, when athletes come and tell them, I'm sure that they understood that there was a priority and there was a what we call a greater need of me being at the corner rather than with them. There was only one instance that I flew to Japan to China for the Olympic trial for 2008 for my younger daughter, and they were trying to get a place for the Olympic Games. Now that's a very, very difficult thing, and I was there in the stadium all by myself, and Dehara Katapiarachi and Elisha were taking part, and I knew that they would get very nervous because this was about 6 months before the games, and there were 10,000 spectators, which I had never seen in a swimming stadium in the queue. So I realized these two kids were very, very young. They would have been 16, 17 years, and to take on the world. And before their event, it was Spain who won the gold medal in the event. So obviously it's Spain going, and after that Sri Lanka going was going to be a problem. That's the time that I went to the dressing room and talked to them. And I said, like what I do in the corner. And I told them, look, I realized they have no chance, but I didn't want to tell them that. I said, you are representing your country. You are going to do the best. And when you get to that, when you see 10,000 people, you're going to get nervous. And I said, only look at the Sri Lankan flag. There are 150 flags around the swimming pool. And look at the Sri Lankan flag and focus on it and say you're doing it for Sri Lanka and do it. They were one before the last. There were 36 countries taking part for the trial, and they came 34th or something. But they were the youngest, so they got a virtually standing ovation from the crowd. So they would always complain, and even now, if I were to restart again, I don't think my wife would have the patience of me, going all over the world with the boxing team. So thank God I managed to deliver on my promises in financial performances at Mass Holdings. So they allowed me the little bit of freeway to go all over the world. But there was tremendous support from the family as well for that support, for me to continue with all this.
So it was actually a needed sacrifice in your part to make in order for the betterment of Sri Lankan boxing.
Yes.
Yes. So as you mentioned, your daughters took part. Daughters Elisha and Shahidi, right?
Yes.
So they took part in international rounds, and they have kind of made Sri Lanka proud by themselves. So first up, I need to clear out that I'm not a sexist, and I might be a bit lenient towards feminism, but
yes.
I do not think of it as any other sort of way. And I know that there is a female boxing, and there's a female boxing center.
Yes.
But in Sri Lanka, it's usually, sexism is a really great cause in Sri Lanka, and there are not as half as female boxers as male boxers in Sri Lanka. So what would you have done if you had two sons instead of two daughters? Would they take part in boxing?
I can't answer that question, for the reason is, say for example, my daughters did water polo and synchronized swimming. Now water polo is as bad as boxing because you hit and do all kinds of things. But if I were to tell them what is the kind of sport that I would like them to concentrate, I would have said, to play tennis or do swimming or maybe do rowing, right? So that in my mind. So, I would have never thought to encourage them to do synchronized swimming, but they loved it. They were more used to water games. So that was their natural talent. If I had sons, I asked myself, would they box? I don't know. It all depends on your DNA and your personality. If they are highly creative guys, do you think they would have taken boxing? No. They might do some drama or something like that. Or they would tend to play cricket or maybe play rugby for Royal or something like that. More the glamour sports. I don't know. Selecting a sport is an individual desire, and I've realized understanding boxing worldwide, especially professional boxing, boxing is a more underprivileged man's sport. It is not, a lot of other sports like fencing or archery or something, which the elite class also they do, or horse riding. These are only, polo, right? They are very, very elite class sports because you need to own a horse, yes, right? And you need to be in an environment like that to take part. So, it's a bit difficult. But boxing, anybody who got a boxing pair of boxing gloves and a punching bag can do it. And even when I went to Royal, I realized majority of the boxers came from underprivileged backgrounds, even at Royal. Two reasons for that is when I'm talking about boxing, why the girls and boys take part. Most of the time, the parents are not very, unless they have got some taste of boxing, are not very keen on boxing because it's a contact sport. I can remember my mother once came to see, I took her only to see one meet. And, I was bleeding from my nose and, I won that fight, but I bled and I had eye cut as well. My mother was virtually in tears and I realized hereafter never get my mother to be at the arena. So a lot of mothers don't like contact sports. They get worried. So that is the reason that boxing has a very fewer number of people, to participate.
Yes. So, for the first time, Ministry of Sport has rendered a helping hand towards Sri Lankan boxing. So, by receiving all this support, what is the main goal that you're set to achieve in terms of Sri Lankan boxing?
In the short term, I want to get a medal at the Commonwealth Games again. After 68 years, Sri Lanka got 3 medals in Brisbane, and it took me nearly 20 years to achieve that. And it took 8 years for me to achieve box at the Olympic Games. The restriction was mostly funding and other facilities. The minister is creating the fundamental understanding what it needs to win a medal. He has got 5 sports, I think 5 or 6 sports in tier 1, which he thinks that we can win medals at Commonwealth Games and the Asian Games. That's number 1. Number 2, he's going to provide facilities for the national team to train, which we never had earlier. And he's giving the funding for a Cuban coach and etc. and for the athletes. And then there's a special payment for high performance athletes, which we have 6 athletes. So he's creating the environment right for us to perform. See, it's like you are going for a Formula 1 race and you don't have a Formula 1 track and you have a Morris Minor to go against the F1, you have no chance. It's something like that. If you want to fight internationally, you need to have the proper, environment, training and the international exposure to fight. So he's creating that.
So, in terms of future, it looks better for Sri Lankan boxing.
I think with the government support, I am sure that we'll be able to do it. But it's a focus, and to bring people together is a task which I've always been struggling. Both the administrators, the boxers, the coaches, because their prime motive might not be the medal. Their prime motive, I'm repeating again, will be some other things, maybe personal stuff, maybe financial rewards, maybe a trip abroad. So you need to manage all those things in the most sensible, sensitive, and what is right for boxing, which makes me very unpopular as well.
Okay, so I think Sri Lankan boxing is very lucky to have you as their president. And with that, we have come to the end of this meeting. And we really appreciate your tiresome work that you do in order for the upliftment of Sri Lankan boxing. And as sportsness, we are very grateful that you had sacrificed some time for us in your busy schedule to talk about Sri Lankan boxing and in terms of the upliftment of Sri Lankan boxing. So thank you for joining with us. And this is for it.
Thank you.